That's right. It is my town. It's actually our town, right? And our guest today for Taylor Roundup, we've given it a name, Daniel Seguin.
Taylor Roundup.
The communications director. Let me stop there and catch my breath for a moment. How you doing, my brother?
Man, I am fantastic. The weather is great. It's been cool out. Man, I am so excited. My garden is beginning to bloom. It looks fantastic. I've been gardening.
Speaking of blooming, I saw you at Food Dudes Saturday night, and you had quite the little tray of tasty samples.
You know, I got to admit, Steve, I piled that tray absolutely far too high, man. There was so much amazing food at Food Dudes. If you haven't been, Food Dudes is an incredible event. This was my first time.
Mine too.
It was your first time
yes,
as well.
Sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Well, you didn't look like a first-timer. You were decked out and ready to go. I got to say, I voted for you for Best in Show. I thought you were pretty impressive.
Well, you're very kind, my friend, but no.
The $2 might have helped, but that's beside the point.
$2, we did pass out some $2 bills because that's good luck. My daddy taught me a long time ago, always keep a $2 bill in your wallet because that'll bring you luck. And I've still got one he gave me.
You know, I should have put it in my wallet.
You need to put it in your wallet.
I put it in my date jar where we keep money for take my wife out to dinner.
Well, don't spend that. Put it, save it, because it'll be worth. It's something. You don't see $2 bills anymore.
Yes,
you really don't.
I think you were about to say it'll be worth something one day. I think it'll still be worth $2 though.
I hope it's worth more than that. I think they are worth more than that.
You think they're worth more than $2?
So. But we need to get one of those. What do they call it? Pneumatic? No, that's postage stamp collectors. What do they call people that collect coins and that? Do you have any idea? No, Jay has no clue.
Don't know. Just coin collectors is all I've heard.
If Jay doesn't know, if it's not involved with the Rangers or the Cowboys, Jay's like, whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. I could tell you who played linebacker in 1973 for the Cowboys, though. Couldn't you? Yeah.
Well, that depends on what part of the year.
It's true. Now, let's talk about Rachel. Rachel did win at the Chamber. She looked exactly like Taylor Swift. I don't know how she pulled that off, but I mean, literally, I took my phone and showed people yesterday when I'm out and about.
Well, she was bragging that dress had seen Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe it just absorbed the Taylor Swiftness.
But the hair, the lipstick,
everything.
The thing, she nailed it. Congratulations. Well deserved.
Yes, very well
Next
deserved.
year's a whole nother story, though.
Are you bringing a bigger game next year?
Even bigger. Now that I've been in my first one, I know exactly what to do.
Are you going to have a horse, Steve?
I'm not telling. But there is a few songs about horses and cowboys and all that stuff.
There are.
Look, you... thank you for coming on.
Of course.
This is our regular thing on Tuesdays. What do you want to talk about today?
Well, Steve, lately I've been getting a lot of questions, and really since I first started with the city back in June, is why are our water bills so darn high? And honestly, I was when I first got here, I was like, I mean, are they really? Mm-hmm. Until I got my first water bill.
Uh-oh. So you're a participant.
I'm a little bit of a participant here, Steve.
Okay, got a little skin in the game.
I got skin in the game. I moved here to Taylor. I wanted to live in town. I wanted to experience what folks experience, plug into the community, and so that's what I did. And I even brought me a sample water bill here, just my water bill, I should say, from this last month, $168, Steve, for 1 month.
And no leaks. Have you checked for
leaks?
leaks?
No leaks. Check for leaks. In fact, I see my usage right here. I used 3,800 gallons, which is actually low for the average
Well, what
person.
is the average use of water?
We estimate the average use of water around 5,000 gallons a month.
Okay.
So that's what a normal kind of household, you can imagine two to four folks, taking a shower, running a dishwasher, doing some laundry.
Well, my daddy used to say, had a bumper sticker on the back of one of his trucks, save water, shower with a friend. That was, my dad was full of those. Save water, shower with a friend. May have to go back to that.
Are we allowed to talk about that on the radio, Steve?
Oh, why
I don't know if
not?
that's
Sure, that's okay. It's okay. I know the owner.
But, I was thinking, like, why is it so crazy high? What?
Well, there's a lot of things in a water bill just besides raw water. Right?
That makes is a great point.
Come on now.
All right, so we read through all the things, right? We've got our water, we've got sewer, of course. That comes along with water.
What goes in must come out.
Well, not all of it though. So that's something else too. some of the water goes out on the grass. So how do we handle that?
Good
So
question.
what we do is during the months of November, December, January, February, when you're typically not watering your grass, if you are, we might have some problems. We need to have a different discussion. But we average how much water you use over those months.
And that's how you set the bill?
And that's how the bill's set for the rest of the year for sewer charges.
Oh, well, that's nice.
So,
that's kind of a little...
Yeah,
but
it helps a little bit.
But wait a minute. Let's think about that for a moment. November. What's the big thing in November?
Well, for me, it's Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh. And what happens at Thanksgiving?
Well,
we overindulge a little bit, and then at Christmas, same thing.
We're doing a lot of dishes. Unless you're doing paper plates, I got to say, then it's not so bad.
Well, I was thinking about other things, but I appreciate you cleaning that idea up for me a little bit. I was thinking about, oh, boy, I got to let my britches out a little bit here. I'm not a Thanksgiving fan.
You're not?
No, I'm not.
Are you not thankful, Steve?
I'm thankful, but I'm thankful that I don't have to look at all that and try to eat it all.
Well, see, you got to do it like food dudes, right? You got to just take
Little
like
sample
one spoon,
portion. That'd be
worth,
nice.
one portion of each thing.
It's just never been my favorite holiday. Want nothing
Are your
to
eyes
do with
bigger
it.
than your stomach? Is that the problem?
No, it's just, what's the purpose? You sit around and eat all day long, and watch the little Dallas Cowboys, and here lately they lose. I mean,
here lately being the last 24 years.
Yeah,
is that what you're talking
30
about?
years. Yeah, that's true. So I mean, but the good news is you do that average.
Yes.
Right.
The good news is we do the average. That helps a little on the sewer side, but the reality is, water and sewer are the majority of it. Sewer for me, I mean, $74 of my $168 is sewer. That's a majority of the bill there. We get a little bit there, about almost half that for water, a little over half. We get garbage and some other fees and whatnot mixed in there.
Let's talk about garbage for a second,
Okay.
because that's kind of a big deal. Are we a recycling city?
We are a recycling city. Yep. Every single household gets an equal sized recycling can as they do for trash cans.
And it's multi-purposed recycling, right?
Yeah, I think it's called a multi-stream, single stream recycling, where everything goes in one can.
And then it gets sorted out.
It does.
And where do we take? Who does the city own the garbage refuse, or we contract that out?
That's a good question, Steve. We actually contract that out. So Waste Connections handles everything for us, from the trash to the recycling to the sorting to the selling, all that kind of stuff.
And where does it go when it leaves a person's driveway?
So it goes up to a recycling center in Hutto, where it gets divided out and split. And then, I don't know the nitty-gritty details of what Waste Connections does with it, but typically in the recycling industry, they're looking for companies who are going to, shred the plastics, melt them down, reuse them somewhere, take those papers, specifically non-soiled paper. So we don't want, a pizza boxes and things that are real soiled. It's just clean paper products is what they'd like to recycle.
Now, for a fact, though, just like I do, that if you got a pizza box in your house, it's going in the recycling bin.
Oh, Steve, it's not supposed to go in the
I know it's
recycling
not
bin.
supposed to, but it's going, right? And then you take it out. You know the story behind that landfill out in Hutto?
I don't.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind
There
that?
is. Commissioner Ron Morrison, when they negotiated that deal out there for that recycling center, the people in Hutto started calling that Mount Morrison out there. And that was not meant to be in a flattering light, that they didn't want that in their neighborhood either. So, I mean, we got to deal with trash.
We do. Well, and it's a little bit amazing from a purely philosophical perspective that we produce all of these things, and then when we're done with them, we bury them, and we decide that it's just going to be in this big hole or mountain. Especially when so much of it could be used for good things, right? Your vegetables could be used in the garden for compost. Even paper products can often be composted. Your paper can be recycled into more paper.
Paper breaks down.
Your plastics, some of them can be recycled. Most
Does
of
the
them
city
can.
of Taylor do a big Bring Us Your Stuff Day?
We have two major Bring Us Your Stuff days. We've got one coming up. In fact, I just heard it's going to be rescheduled to May 10th.
Okay.
Is going to be our big cleanup day. There's going to be two pickup locations. One is there at Public Works on Main Street.
Right up the road from us.
Right up the road, right kind of across the street from Murphy Park.
Uh-huh.
And there's one other pickup location. It's going to be on Welch Street. That's in South Taylor.
Now, what is included in those? Is it like paint products?
Good question. So that particular event is just your big, bulky stuff that you can't really... Not refrigerators, Steve. You can't do anything with refrigerant in the system unless it has a tag that says a licensed AC kind of contractor has pulled out
all the Freon.
All the Freon. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's couches and it's mattresses and it's beds. And
washer
it's
and dryers.
Washer, dryer, junk in your backyard. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
So that's what that event is. Then we have another event that Williamson County is putting on. And my handy-dandy partner that's here in the room is pulling up the date for me because I don't have it on the back of my head. And that's the one where you can bring household hazardous waste like paint.
You
can bring oil and various other liquid-type
recycled oil,
waste.
that kind of thing.
Yes.
I think, and it goes to what Paul Leal does in his environmental division of the constable's office in Precinct 4. You don't want to go throw it out on the side of the road on 112.
Right.
Okay, that's not called recycling.
Well,
that's called illegal dumping.
It's not taking care of our community, right? If we care about our environment, our land, our cattle, our creatures, our birds, then we aren't going to dump that junk on the side of the road.
And there's so many things that can be recycled now, like tires. Okay,
yes.
You could turn shred a tire up, and make a great playscape surface for kids out at a park.
You can. There's some challenges with that, Steve, but we can recycle some of the tires into that kind of stuff. There's steel banding that's in the tires, and that you don't want that going into your playgrounds.
Not all tires don't have that.
But a lot of tires do have that, like the ones on your regular cars. And so, yeah, generally folks can bring tires to shops that take tires off, and they'll, for a small fee, they'll take any tires that you have to
wherever the recycling
pile
place
where they
is.
take them to recycle.
There's a great big one going toward not Marble Falls, but out that way. Yeah, I guess it is Marble Falls. There's a great tire recycling facility out there.
Wonderful. Well, April 19th is the
2 weeks.
Household Hazardous Cleanup Day.
That's 2 weeks from now, right? That's 2 weeks Friday.
It is.
Or
and
Saturday.
That's going to be out there at the Expo Center. Williamson County is putting that on.
Okay.
So that's not just for Taylor. That's for all of Williamson County.
And you normally, to do those things, you have to show a copy of
your water bill.
Yeah.
Speaking of your water bill,
sure.
Steve, so back to what we were talking about. When I first got here, I was quite shocked, like most folks probably are when they actually start looking at it and comparing cities. Taylor's residential water, compared to the region, we are one of the highest. The only other city in the region that's higher than Taylor is Pflugerville. So if you live in Pflugerville, I am so sorry, your water bill is the highest of all our comparison cities. We set our water rates back in June of last year for the coming. We actually did a water rate study, Steve. And what the water rate study looks at, it looks at our entire water and sewer system, at what upgrades are needed, what repairs are needed, what lines need to be replaced, and it estimates out when we need to do those things, how much debt we need to issue to be able to actually do those projects, and then backtracks and determines how much we need to charge for water and sewer to be able to afford to make those repairs. So it's really a forward-looking planning effort.
Where does our water come from?
So that's a great question. So most folks don't understand where it comes from. It actually comes from Lake Granger.
Okay.
All of the water in Taylor comes from Lake Granger. Brazos River Authority manages and maintains that lake and the water supply that comes out of it. And so they pump it out of the lake, they treat it, and they send it to Taylor.
How deep is Lake Granger?
That's a great question.
And how, look at me, knowledge. How much water do we pump daily out of Lake Granger?
So coming to Taylor, we need on average about 3 to 4 million gallons a day. So, and then really in municipal standards, that's not a ton. What their peak usage, so that's on the highest use summer day. Everyone's watering at the same time.
Sure.
You've got folks using it in for industrial purposes. We peak out usually around 11 to 12 million gallons a day. So that's the absolute peak usage. But the lake can sustain, according to some of BRA's estimates, many times that amount. So we're nowhere close to capacity at the lake. What we're close to capacity on is how much we can actually pump out. It's the capacity of the pumps themselves and the pipes that take water.
The pipe is a certain diameter. The pumps are a certain horsepower.
Exactly.
And how many water towers?
In Taylor, we've got 4 water towers.
Okay. Any plans to build additional water towers?
Well, water towers are primarily used, as you know, to kind of maintain an equalized pressure across our system. So we actually have 2 pressure planes. We have an upper plane and a lower plane. So Taylor doesn't all stay on the same pressure. It's kind of complex how they set it up. I still don't fully understand it myself. But what I do know is that sometimes they actually take a water tower offline because it's too much storage. And when the water sits there for long enough, it loses some of that chlorine. That chlorine degrades, and so it no longer meets standards. So we actually have 1 water tower in excess in capacity right now here in Taylor.
Now, and the state used to do a test every so often on your water quality, and people would brag about that we are a bona fide Texas water, high standards allowed. Do they still do that?
They do. We actually publish every single year a water quality report.
And who
that
does
details,
that? Is that TCEQ?
It is. I believe it is TCEQ, and they actually monitor all of our tests. We test it daily. It's not just a once a year thing.
Right.
We're testing our water every single day.
Okay.
Or BRA, I should say, is testing the water every single day.
And we published that report. But back growing up, when you and I were, you would see a town, as you were coming into a town, they would advertise their water quality as one of the reasons why you should stop and eat lunch or move there or any of that. It was kind of like the school district where, great school district. Oh, and we also have great clean water.
Sure.
Kind of thing. Water's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I think most cities in Texas are generally pretty good about maintaining good water quality. And, many years ago, the reason that BRA has our water system, it used to be owned by Taylor. We used to maintain and manage the pumps out there at Lake Granger in the water treatment process.
And who owns those now?
The Brazos River Authority owns those. And so, unfortunately, there were some times in years past where we didn't do the greatest job decades and decades ago of maintaining it. So the state said, we're going to give this to the Brazos River Authority to maintain and manage. And they've done a great job. They've expanded the system. They serve multiple water systems, not just Taylor now from Lake Granger.
How do we get our water bill to be lower?
That's a big challenge, Steve, because our biggest issue right now is the city of Taylor is an old town. We've been a big town for a long, long time. We used to be the largest town in Williamson County, the center of economic activity in Williamson County.
Talked about that last time.
Some of our pipes are still the same pipes we had way back then.
Oh, boy.
I literally, Steve, let me tell you a story. When I first got here, not long after, there was a major water line break, and we had to go repair it. It shut off Plowman's Kitchen, which I was really sad about because I wanted to go out there to eat. Shut off some neighborhoods there around it. And I went out there about 5 o'clock. I knew they were probably wrapping up the repair. And I look in the hole. Sure enough, they're putting this big old scab or Band-Aid over top of this pipe. It's like a big clamp. And they're sitting there wrenching it down. I think it had 8 or so big bolts that they have to screw down to tighten it up. And I see they're getting it on there. And right next to it, Steve, what did you know? 3 other repairs, one after the other.
Oh, no, back to back to back.
From years past. Back to back to back. So what that tells me, Steve, is we have an old water system. We have an old sewer system. In fact, not too long ago, we actually found a wooden water line. Water line
made out of wood?
Out of wood.
What?
In Taylor.
Well, the Romans were here? What? How does that?
What they would do, they would carve like 2 pieces of wood, circular shape,
right, and
clamp them together with steel banding,
right,
and put pressure on it, and it would leak like a sieve, but it would work. Water would get through it,
but it would leak, but the wood would swell, wouldn't it? And
it would
seal
swell,
the leaks.
And then eventually, you're depositing calcium in the pipe, and that creates kind of a pipe structure inside of the wood.
And you've seen this firsthand?
Myself, I did not see it, but there are staff here in Taylor who saw it and who replaced that pipe.
And I hope they took that out and preserved that somewhere because that's something I'd like to see that.
As you can imagine, there wasn't a lot left, Steve.
Oh, I bet it was just crumbly.
It's just crumbly. And, whenever we replace these lines, sometimes we can put the scab on it. But sometimes you go in there and you're trying to fix something and it just crumbles in front of you. So you got to back up a little further. It crumbles some more. You got to keep going until you find a piece that's solid you can attach to with a new pipe.
But there's got to be ways we as citizens can save water, right?
Well,
around the house.
If you look at your bill, it's not how much you're using that's really costing us. It's the base rate.
Right.
So a base rate for water is $44. The base rate for sewer is $35. That's before you use any.
But then as you use, you pay, and it's a tiered system.
It is a tiered system. Yeah, you're usually every 2,000 gallons or so the price goes up just a little bit.
Because they're kind of trying to teach us use less.
That's the goal of it.
Well,
and also to kind of offset. The highest cost of the system really goes to your highest users. Especially some of your industrial users. So the more water they use, the more water they're going to be paying for, and help to pay for some of those costs to repair the system.
Okay. So, but there's still, don't let your faucet drip.
Unless there's freezing opportunities, don't let it drip. If you have leaks, encourage you to get out there and make those repairs as soon as possible. And here's some ways that we're trying to offset the water bill costs. Some of this cost is expansion of the system. But as businesses come in and or developments, and they're looking to invest in Taylor, we're looking at opportunities to offset the cost of expansion of the system. And so we have what are called impact fees. And those impact fees, the company will pay based on how much we believe it's going to impact our water system. The state restricts us. We can only charge them up to 50% of what it's going to cost us for them to move here.
Wow.
So if it costs us, $10 million to build out our system to meet capacity, we can only charge them $5 million for their impact fees.
Well, look, this is interesting stuff, Daniel. We need to take a little break, though. And we're back with our final segment on Hometown Highlights, and we're calling this the Taylor Roundup.
The Taylor Roundup.
The Taylor Roundup. Daniel Seguin. And if you know the name Seguin, if you're from Texas, you get it. Daniel is part of that legacy. And as we were talking off the air, there's not a lot that Daniel doesn't read or understand and ask. If you ask him a question, he's got an answer.
Well, Steve, if you ask me a question about the Dallas Cowboys, I might not have the answer for you.
Well, who would?
I know somebody who's sitting kind of across from us here. I think Jay Davis might have the answer.
All right. Well, look, we've had an interesting conversation about water.
We have. My water bill is $168, and I'm about to cry over here. But I think a lot of folks can relate. And so,
sure.
I was looking at our wastewater and water master plan, Steve. How much do we need to invest in our system to get it, to keep it running, and to improve it so that we're meeting good quality standards from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality? And I'm looking here. I've got this right in front of me. Our 5-year plan, we have to spend $30 million in our water system. In our sewer system, we need to spend $11 million. And then in our 10-year plan, we need to spend $67 million on water, $51 million on sewer. In 20 years, we need to spend $42 million in water and $62 million on our sewer system. Add those all up together, Steve, we're looking at over $200 million that we expect to have to spend on our water and sewer system to maintain it.
But that's not all city money either, though, is it? And there's grants available. There's when new business comes to town, we kind of split the costs.
Yeah, to some degree, we're able to split the costs with businesses that come in. Like I said earlier in the segment, the state allows us to charge them up to 50% of the cost of what it's going to cost the city for those new businesses and developments to come in. But that still leaves us a lot, and there are some grant opportunities. We do have some grants currently. Especially in drainage, we have a lot of grants, but in water and sewer, it's more of a challenge to get grant opportunities. They're fewer and far between, and it takes so long to get funding. We actually have a project with the Water Development Board. It's kind of one of those loan/grant projects. And Steve, we've been holding off on this project for the last 5 years, waiting on this grant to finally come through, and they still haven't given us final approval. So
it's like digging with the railroad, isn't it?
It's in some cases it's worse.
No.
It takes years to get approvals for these grants, and we're paying on some of these loans as well. When we get loans from the Water Development Board, we're paying on it 2, 3, 4 times before we ever actually get to break ground and work on a project, which is just mind-boggling.
What do you want to leave us with today?
Well, I want to leave folks with some hope, because the main thing that's going to help to offset some of these costs is, and the cost of our water bills is bringing in those new developments who can help fund these projects and help contribute towards the system. And that there is hope. You know, I know a lot of cities have systems that are a little bit cheaper than Taylor. But in Taylor, we're a small town. You don't get that experience everywhere. You know,
True.
This is a wonderful feel. And so I understand folks' frustration. I just hope they know that we're not just trying to jack up their bills to stick it to them. You know, our goal is to take care of the system, be
Right.
good stewards of the system, and ensure it's not falling apart left and right. So I hope folks realize that. Hope they send in more questions to communications.
There you
With
go.
an S, communications@taylortx.gov. That's our email address. Send us any questions. We'll bring them here onto the show. And next week, we plan to talk about, have a little development update from the city, share what developments are on the way, what's in progress, and what we can expect.
That's awesome. And if you don't want to send your email to the city worried about they're going to track you down and double your water bill, which they won't, you can email us here at steve@cbntexas.com and put in the title Taylor Roundup. Taylor Roundup. And that way we'll know that the questions are specifically focused on the city of Taylor. Look, thank you guys for coming in. Daniel,
Thank you, Steve.
you're always very informative and well prepared, and I know our listeners appreciate that.